All right, welcome back. Today I have another very exciting game for you. We're continuing to follow Andy Liu through the qualifying rounds of the 12th Sankei tournament in Japan. He has won the first two rounds of the qualifier to get to the third and final round, and if he wins this game, he will be going to the main tournament, which would be super exciting. Let's get into the game and pretty straightforward. Black approaches, white counter approaches. This is a little bit more aggressive than just, playing out the corner however black wants. Black does this high pincer, and we get into an immediate, fairly difficult situation. The whole point of this move right here that white just made is not really that white is super interested in saving the stone, but more that it's kind of on this vital point for black, and it's just annoying for black to have to work around it and then go back and capture it at some point. And we can see that the black stone is doing a similar thing to the white shape. So we kind of have this equal situation where both players have played this sort of pincer moves that make the shape a little awkward. White dives into the corner here. And this is this is in some ways the end of the Joseki. There's different things white can do here. A little bit more popular is to play, some sort of, pincer on this black stone to get this sort of equal result where both sides have a stone with Aji, but it's that stone is still fairly weak. Granted, one option is to do what white does here and just straight play to move this stone out. Because these black string of stones doesn't have two eyes yet, so the logic is understandable. But as opposed to playing something like this, where this black stone now is pretty limited. I mean, you can move it out, but if you just move it out, you're damaging your own stones. So it's like, yeah, black could do this type of thing, but now this is really scary for black. So this is not, not really viable in this position. So if black wanted to, black could do this, white could do this, and limit that Aji. It seems like a pretty equal result, but white moves the stone out directly, uh, which is an interesting idea. Black just Hanes once and then takes the top for himself, which seems to me a little bit better of a result for black. Like, this string of stones is weak, but it's not dead, and it can scramble and get eyes on the side if it needs to. So, like, this isn't even really that big of a concern because, like, we're just totally damaging this upper side group now. Even though, this stone gets to move out, this group is just getting surrounded. It's not that good. Not that good for white. And now, the upper side looks nice because this white stone, even though white played in the corner first here, black has gotten two stones attacking it. And the nice thing for black with this position is that this stone is in a nice place because it's very light. If this were a stone we had to save, it would be really bad to have it this close to thickness. And if we were just to take it off the board, black would never now extend to this point. That would be too close to thickness. Black would just make a two-space extension like this. But since the stone is on the board, then, you know, when white responds here, black can just do some really simple things, and this stone just is nice. Like, it's on a good point to limit. Like, white can't really, like, attach here because we have this stone right here. It just prevents white from doing anything super severe, and it really kind of, if white continues to come out here, it looks really dicey for white if black starts following up in here, like where exactly white's eyes are going to come from. I mean, white can still live really small in the corner with something like this. But exchanging this move right here for these two is pretty good. Like in Sente, black's gonna come out and jump out or do something now. Yeah, it seems like black gets a good result with this. And black actually does something more severe than what I was suggesting, which was just making a base, which is coming in here and, threatening this wedge directly, making the stone even stronger, white shape even weaker. And then black has a cool idea here. Instead of just making a base, black's like, I'm going to build a big wall. And the cool thing about this is that, black now gets to lean on and forcing your opponent to come right between your two groups, especially after you spent two moves to try and move this one stone out, like, that doesn't feel good to me. White does get some compensation in that it looks like, if white can swallow up the black stone here, white will get a decent amount of territory on the edge, but at the same time, you know, black gets to net this white group in, and because of the shortage of liberties and this potential snapback shape here, you can see that white's not going to be able to push out here, unfortunately. Black pulls this stone up, so we're getting into a fairly complicated situation. And here we see that, white just can create like a little bit of weakness in the shape, but not really. Like there's still this cutting point slash Atari, but it's not that big of a deal. And here we see now that black is cut off, black has to come back and make the eyes. So black just boom, 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 is only going to get like 2 or 3 points of territory in here, but lived really effortlessly. And look at this nice big wall that we built up. And now this stone is not too close to these stones. It's on the optimal point, which is really cool because there's all this thickness. So white can't, like, this is not going to work for white. Like, this just does not. Maybe white could live in the on the inside with something, you know, I'd like this would be alive, I suppose. Um, yeah, this would live. But at this point, these two white stones are super weak, and they're just gonna like. Could you imagine? Well, black could probably. No, there's too many weaknesses. But like, what is white even gonna do here? Push black, like give black fourth line territory on the whole left side to get away from the influence of this wall. And this is often how you end up making territory as with your thickness like this is that it's not that you're using it directly to make territory, but the fact that this group has to run and this is so strong just lets you take all of the left side. So that would be a really good result for black. And it's one of those things like, when you see your opponent invade like this, if your opponent invades and lives with 2 points of territory, that's a very good result for you. So we can just see here, even though this would have been a good amount of black territory, white comes in, manages to live fairly easily, but in Gote, make sure that your opponent doesn't, and black has gotten all this thickness and can just like totally savage these two white stones now and get way more territory than like the 10 points that white just destroyed. Like black's going to get like 20 or 30 points out of attacking this group. So this is definitely a good result, for black. When your opponent invades, your first question should be, can I kill it? Because if you can kill it, just kill it. But usually you can't. If your opponent did any reading before they invaded, you won't be able to kill it. And then the question is, can I make it live small? And if you can make it live small, that's usually your best choice because it's guaranteed. Like you're not going to be like, oh no, I didn't manage to kill it and now it's destroyed all my territory. No, you're just forcing it in, like building up strength on the outside. So it's much easier to see if you're going to succeed or not. And once you have that thickness, you can just take Sente to use it somewhere else on the board. Another option is to ask, like, can I chase it profitably? Like, can I force it out into the center and build up territory while attacking? Those are just some of the ideas you should look at, when you do get invaded. Black's going to put this stone into motion, and I thought this was really interesting because my instinct, in a lot of ways, is white plays this move to kind of clamp down on the Aji of these two stones. And I would kind of think, okay, white's sort of got this thickness facing down towards my stone. I'm just going to enclose the corner, nullify this. Yeah, white gets 10-ish points. It's really hard to tell because, if white comes back and does something else, there's moves like this that you have to read out, which gets really tricky. So white's territory may not be quite as big as it looks. But let's say 10 points in here. I'm just going to jump over here, keep white from getting super big. One of the things, though, is that if you do just enclose the corner like this, there's still potential invasions, things like this that might work, especially if white gets a little thicker over here. And I think black didn't like that and comes up with a more intriguing line of play, which is to actually move out with this stone. And this looks rough, crawling along the second line, but black has a really good idea in that once white comes down like this after the Hane, which white needs to, otherwise this single stone can get captured pretty directly. The black can attach here, and then white has to come back, and then black connects. And the cool thing about this variation is that it turns the corner into cash right away. So when I just showed that enclosure, I showed you that black or white would still have some moves to come into the corner. Now there is nothing in the corner. Like anything white does is just dead. So it's really cool that black was able to turn this corner into cash by pulling this stone out. And white didn't really gain, like these three stones on the outside, like typically we would think that three stones on the outside versus three stones on the inside would be a good exchange for white. But the triangled stones are kind of short of liberties and aren't really projecting any useful influence because black has the A and B stones, which are really kind of not like this area doesn't look like good potential for white because of the A and B stones already being on the board. So if white tries to, if white tries to expand this influence, black just jumps on the bottom. Like, no, actually, that would be kind of conservative. Black could probably do something like this. Given that, if white responds, black has Sente moves like this at some point, So, um, and same thing if white tries to, say like, oh, I'm gonna stop you here, black can just kind of like jump here, and this is still, or actually, it might not even be necessary to do that. Just invade down here, and then you get a 2-point extension no matter which way white comes. Um, we could see something like this being reasonable, or maybe we attach here, and if white gives way, now this jump. Like obviously, this is almost nothing for white right now. So really well handled by black to just turn the corner into hard cash right away. Uh, these exchanges are not as bad as they would, stereotypically be, just because it gives black definitive territory, eye shape, and cash in the corner. And what's more is that it even happens in Sente. White still has to come back and keep this stone from moving out, which is really huge. So, not only did black turn the corner into cash without giving white very much at all, like if we kind of assume that these two stones were going to be captured anyway. And what's crazy is that there's still a move here that white has to be careful of. So white's not getting very much here, and black got this huge wall in the center and the lower right corner in cash. I think that black is doing very well in this game, especially since black got Sente. This I think black is definitely has the favorable position on this board because the black stones are really dominating in the center. White has very little going other than this small territory over here, which is no bigger than black's territory down here. And plus, black has a few points here, which is about equal to white's few points here. So it just seems like, black's got a solid potential in this game. And what we see here is black is going to take a lot of territory on the left side, and then is going to poke at white's shape and attack it. So this is really crazy. It's like, white hasn't yeah, white's sort of taken the corner territory. There's still some Aji that black could use to sort of reduce or invade there. But if we give, like, these 8 points in the corner to white, black just built 8 points on the left side. So white's not gaining anything, and black is also creating this vast chasm of territory on the top, which is pretty crazy. And, you know, White's trying to fight out with this group because White doesn't want to get totally sealed in. Like if Black cuts and then White just does something and this is all like totally 100%, going to be sealed in, then like any Black move around here is absolute Sente that just has to be responded to, and that will reduce the corner to almost nothing. Whereas if white can stay connected out, like right now, since this cut doesn't work directly with this wedge, and it's complicated, but black can't just immediately cut here. Um, if black just, let's just make it more obvious. If white is definitely connected out, though, and black tries this same move, white can actually just full-blown ignore this, to do craziness on the outside that black will have to respond to. And it's a really big difference because if reducing the corner isn't Sente, black's never going to get the chance to do it because white can just ignore and play on the outside. So whether or not this group gets connected out is actually really big in endgame. Connection to the outside can really change Sente-Gote relationships with a group. So here we see white is, trying to sort of maybe get a sure eye, because, we're not 100% guaranteed over here, because there's tricky moves like this. And if we block like this, then this is connecting over to here, so there's no eyes in the corner. And if we do this, then there's this obvious sequence, which is terrible. So we would have to do this, which would be a big reduction in. Now you can see that we can just do this, and we've got only one eye. So if we can get an eye out here, that would be great. White would be very excited. So black says, no, I'm pulling that stone out, and then white connects to the outside for real, and black makes this nice extension. This is just good shape. It's extending from a solid black position, approaching the corner. Super big point. Uh, always want to take those when you can. And here, I think black didn't want to let white force too much on the outside. Black does give up a lot in this variation, though. And But, the logic is that, okay, black wants Sente really bad to close this off. So black does this one exchange right here, and then takes Sente to seal off the upper side territory. White Hane's here, and again, this result looks pretty rough because, this is a big corner. Taking these two stones is really big. So that's definitely big for white. But here's the thing, black takes Sente again to just nullify the potential on the bottom. So, in order to get this big corner, white had to take Gote twice. So this is not as good of a result as it initially looks. Black is playing very fast and taking all of the big points. Like giving up this big corner to play here is really brilliant. This move has room for a two-space extension both ways. It's hard to attack. Black has access to the center in a few places. It really nullifies, what this white group is going to get. And one of the reasons that this move is so well timed and so good is you kind of have to count to see it. So let's see what the score is real quick. White has about oh, I don't know, maybe 15 points over here. Yeah, 15 points, say. Plus about 5 here would be 20. There's not too much over here, but let's give white 5 for 25 plus, oh, another 15-ish here, roughly 40 points on the board for white, and added to that is a 6.5 point Comey. But then for black, we've got roughly 30 for the various groups, and then if we just say this is another 20 plus maybe another 5, um, roughly 55, to which, white only has 40 on the board. So if we're looking at the board position right here, and we see, okay, after this, I'm going to be ahead by 15 points on the board. That means that white has to make, say, at least 10 points on the bottom side without giving me anything to come back into the game. So the most logical thing is just to take the big point on the bottom to yourself. And it's going to be really hard for white to build up 10 points of territory with black not really being weak anywhere. So black definitely has the advantage at this point, and it's mostly a matter of white trying to catch up. And this is a big deficit. Being in the middle game, clearly down by that much on the board, this game has not gone white's way. And so you see here, white comes in and, plays aggressively, says, hey, if you do this, and then maybe I can attach here, I don't know. Now, it looks like I'm getting more than you are. And, black doesn't want that to happen. So black just pincers right off the bat because, black's not weak. Like, granted, like white's got the wall here and kind of this central influence here, but you know, uh, this wall is still out further, so this, lends some support to what's going on the bottom side. And also the lower right-hand corner is super solid as well. So black has resources. And this is kind of neat, black just descends, protecting territory. White comes here, and now black makes his own two space extension. So we can see that, well, white got some stones facing the center, which is useful, but black just made another, like, I don't know, 4, 5, let's say 5 points here, because I counted this as 1 point before, so let's now count these five. So black just made another 5 points, which means now you need like 15 points in the center area to come back in, and that's assuming black only like makes two eyes over here. It's getting pretty dicey. So white just goes all out, and black, kind of plays along because, white kind of has to try this, even though it's not likely to be successful. In fact, even right now, just black jumping in like this really would kind of like settle a lot of the issue. But oh no. Black activates this Aji real quick, and this is really slick timing because black gets something really cool out of this Aji. White Hanes to keep black from connecting underneath with the Atari, and black comes back and lives 100%. But now there's this tricky Aji. If white does something to, try and seal the center, black has this and can come here. And now black is going to capture these two stones, and white has no territory anymore, so this would not be acceptable. So white actually has to come back and do this. And what this means is that even though black didn't reduce white's territory with this Aji, black did live in Sente in the top right, which is huge, because that could have been a source of co-threats, that could have been a lot of different things. So black presses in. This is Sente as well. If white ignores, terrible, terrible things happen to white's eye shape. Black gets this Hane in, and then this is kind of the last crucial stage of the game. We have like a few forcing moves being thrown in here, and I'll talk about this ko shape in just a second because that's the crux of the matter right now. Is what happens when white kicks off this ko? Obviously, black will capture it first. If black captures all of this upper side as territory, if black plays an ineffective co-threat somewhere and white fills, the best black can do is something like this, and then try and figure out what to do if white pushes again. And if this happens, uh, you know, even let's assume black plays somewhere else now. White pushes out. This block may or may not be possible, but if there's been some, because right now it doesn't work because there's this, and then this would be a double Atari. But let's just imagine that, if black has already had a reinforcement somewhere around here, that this block would work directly because black can just connect back like this, and this cut isn't scary. So if this is the final result, then the score has changed by 16 points. These 4 points of white territory were also originally black stones, so white has the 4 captures as well. And if we go back to the original shape, all of these points are black territory. And if we go forward, then black's territory is pushed back. Um, these 8 points, and we'll count a little bit extra for the potential that black would have to take Gote or white could cut here or something. So roughly a 16-point swing if white wins that ko. And at this point, that you have to really know where the ko threats are, who has more, and I believe at this point that black is pretty much confident of victory. White needs like 15 points down here, actually maybe even like 20 at this point because black got like all this extra territory down here now. So, white needs a really big center. And so this is cool. White starts surrounding the center with the most aggressive move possible. And then black comes down here, which is almost Sente. Like black would almost expect white to play here, but then black would get this Sente follow-up too, and this would just be nice to reduce, and then, black could, come in somewhere like this maybe, threatening to use the cutting Aji uh, with this 2-point jump. But white instead goes all out by, going to block black from as much of the center area as possible, which is pretty crazy. Black jumps here, and this is absolute Sente, actually. If black pulls those stones out and takes the whole corner, then there's not even if white does take all of this territory, it wouldn't be enough. Pretty crazy. And then black starts weaseling in, saying, you just can't, you gave me too many points down here. You let me take too many points away from you. You can't get a big enough, so I can just poke in all these different directions, and what are you going to do? And white says, well, I'm going to start the ko. Because if I can win the ko, then I only need to get like 15 points in here. Whereas if I don't, I need like, 25, 30 points down here, and that's not happening. So maybe if I win the ko, I can come back into this game. But this is the really cool thing, is that this move that black last played is enough to win the ko for black. Or at least it gives black an additional ko threat. So let's see what happens here. White, just does this, and keep your eye on the A stone, because this is going to be important for when this ko gets resolved. Black plays a ko threat, threatening to pull these two stones out and destroy all this territory. Not tenable. And both sides have a fair number, and in some ways, white has more ko threats overall, let's say. But the thing is that white needs to win this ko and take almost no damage. So if white ever makes a move that's smaller than the value of the ko, black can just resolve the ko and be fine and take the damage somewhere else, because black's going to be 16 points better off winning the ko. So if white makes a 14 or 15 point ko threat, black just ignores it, resolves the ko, game over white. Now, if black loses the ko, because black is already so far ahead on the board, black can lose the ko, and even if black makes like a 10-point ko threat, like way smaller than the value of the ko, white still has to answer that, because if white doesn't, black will still be ahead, and this is white's last real chance to create complications. So this ko is much heavier on white than it is on black, even though it looks like black has the more to lose in this shape. White needs to win the ko by a lot in a way that black just does not. See, and so black is just like, but I can kill this group. I have so many co-threats too. So finally, let's see, we're going through here. And now, notice I said to pay attention to the A stone. Black follows up with this move, because remember, white ignored A to start the ko. And so this is what's really brilliant about the move at A, is that it gives black enough compensation that even after the dust settles and all this craziness happens, okay, black is still going to be able to do enough damage down here. And it's really subtle. But okay, this is kind of this gets us everything that we need. Or so one thing to notice is that immediately after A and B, for which is what we got for white winning the ko. The and Sente for that matter, because after we cut at B, white had to play this sequence in Gote. So we got A, B, and Sente. And, just notice, like, the triangled stone and this are now territory, which they weren't before. So we're immediately 3 points better off in territory. Secondly, we've reduced, like, a fair amount of the potential territory in here, and we get this B2 move that we just played in Sente. Because uh, now that we have these 3 stones over at, like, A, B, and then, this triangled one as well, this cuts the white group down to only one eye right at the triangle points. So now this has to connect back out, which means we got B2 in Sente, which if we compare that to, if white gets to play this move, white's just alive in the corner with at least maybe 5 points of territory, give or take, depending on how some of the end game works out. Moreover, if we don't respond to this, white can even follow up and capture the C2 stone. So this would be a huge point. So for black to get B2 in Sente is actually really big. And so what we see is that white, pushes down on black a little bit, but has to come out here. And then after we capture this, white still has to play this kind of ugly move just to connect out, which is pretty crazy. And so after the capture, we are 4 points better off here, and probably about, man, let's see, now white only gets 2 points, so that's three, plus we get another couple, plus 5 points better here. So we gained 9 points directly, just, from what we got out of the co, and we got to push in to this territory a little bit. So what it looks like is that uh, our co-threat was worth roughly, you know, um, 8 points, or not 8 points. Yeah, 8 points. If the co was worth 16, this was worth about half the value of the co. So white has come close. Earlier we were saying white needed to get about like 10-point advantage, over the previous situation. White has narrowed that quite a bit, but there's nowhere on the board to really create complications at this point, and black is still a solid like 2-3 points ahead. And I feel personally like Andy, probably from the moment that he played over at uh, a as a just as a reducing move just before white kicked off the ko, that he was aware that if white kicked off the ko after A, the follow up at B would be big enough for him to preserve his lead. It seems like the play during the ko was so composed that black had it under control the whole time, which is super super powerful. I mean, it's really amazing how it good in advance like a lot of the pros reading are. And here we can see, once this is defended over here, there's no need to connect at A at this point. You can just, if white cuts at A, you can just extend to B, and there's nothing there. There's nothing there for white at this point. So they're just kind of, doing some of this end game stuff. Black ended up with a few more points over in here as a result of the different play. White didn't really manage to reduce very much. If we go back to what I was using this line as the border to calculate this territory when I counted in the mid game. So that turned out to be fairly accurate. It's just something, when I'm estimating territory, I just draw straight lines across. Sometimes on a slant if one player is super thick, but in this case it wasn't really clear, so I just drew a straight line across. Drew a straight line down for this, so black ended up doing a little bit better in this corner. And of course over time white expanded the size of the upper left, but super cool game. And what we'll see is that no one makes any huge mistake in the end game. They're just filling these little half-point codes all over the board. And yeah, at this point, we can even go to the score cool, but I believe Andy ends up winning this by 2.5 points, which is not actually, in a pro game, that's a pretty solid margin because the winning player will give up points to simplify the game. And so what you'll see, yeah, Youngil got 83.5 to 86 for Andy Liu. And they'll give up points to simplify the game. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'll give you, like, I'm ahead by 8 points. I'll give you 2 points here to keep this crazy covariation from happening. I'll give you 2 points here to keep this invasion from working. I'll give you 2 points here, to, live really simply with this group, and then it's just the end game, which both sides have completely read out, and there's no surprises, and you're winning by 2.5 points. So it works out pretty well. And excellent game by Andy in this one. I thought Andy did a good job of seizing the initiative early after this complicated variation. I feel pros have played this. I feel like moving this stone out immediately is a little impatient and a little dubious because I just think that this black counter pincer slash extension works so well. And this combination, the A B combination on top just worked so well. Because now, even just at this point, before black gets a bigger wall, these three stones are pretty strong now. Yeah, they've got five liberties. They've got a two-stone wall projecting towards this stone, so it's not like a perfect extension yet. But once this wall gets built up, you know, um, when we get to this finished result like this, now that black has this whole wall, the A stone is just perfect. If if we didn't have the wall and white had this, we would almost want the A stone to be like a line further back at B so that it was still cramping these stones, but it wasn't so easy to attack. Like if we just ignore that the wall is there, this is a good move for white, just typically in this shape in the upper left. But when black has this thick wall, like I showed earlier, black just attacks this all out. And even if white manages to, do something and live like this, then, black just takes the corner, attacks the two white stones at d17 and e16, and it's not good for white at all. White only gets 2 points of territory, well, maybe 3 points of territory up here. It's not worth it. Black is just going to take all this territory uh, over here, and there's not much white can do. So, really good game. Congratulations to Andy. He will be playing in the 12th Sankei Cup. Unfortunately, the schedule has not been released yet, but once we know when that game is, I'm pretty sure that the Sankei Cup is broadcast on at least one of the Go servers, although I'm not sure which one yet. And of course, we're waiting for the schedule to come out anyway, but I will have more information about that game. I'm trying to figure out, I might do some live streaming of that game, or at least jump in after it's been going for like an hour or hour and a half, because I think it's pretty long time controls. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what's going on with that. We'll definitely do a game review of it. I'm really excited about the new AGA system for US professional players that has been put together, and it's really cool to see an AGA pro winning games in a national tournament. So, congratulations, Andy Liu, and thank you so much for the Korean Baduk Association for working with the AGA to create a pro system in the US, and also thank you to I believe it's the Kansai Keien, who is organizing the Japanese tournament, and thank you to them for inviting the American and European professional players to play in a national Japanese tournament. Uh, they obviously don't have to extend that kind of hospitality to players from other nations for what is a, Japanese professional tournament. So many thanks to them as well for providing this opportunity to Western players. And that will do it for this time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.